Bone the French and get the guillotines out. We need to start chopping these heads off and throwing them like basketballs.
And now, it's time for Brad vs. TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the clock out.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Today, we're encountering, and this seems to be something of a theme with communist TikTok, but another truly bloodthirsty video targeting the rich. For context for audio listeners, she's reacting to and discussing two headlines, one of which shows an increase in wealth among the richest Americans, and the other shows a homelessness crisis on the rise. Now let's take a listen to what she had to say and try not to lose too many brain cells.
Bone the French and get the guillotines out. We need to start chopping these heads off and throwing them like basketballs. How the hell can these two photos exist in the same society? We've got the richest 1% richer than they've ever been, and the poorest among us poorer than they've ever been. We've got people that can't afford to eat. They don't know when their next meal gonna come from. They live it in their cars while working two jobs because they can't afford rent. They can't afford basic necessities, food, shelter. Come on now. You got people rationing their damn insulin. People not being able to go to the dentist so their teeth are rotting out of their mouth because they can't afford it. And we're supposed to think that this is acceptable? Hell no. These people should be scared to post pictures in front of their private jets and on their boats on a holiday while the rest of us don't know if we're going to be able to afford groceries for the rest of the month. Well, we got to pick up second jobs and turn our hobbies into monetization so we can afford to keep up with the rising trend and rising costs of things. Come on. We gotta revolt. We gotta start chopping these damn heads off. Get to chopping.
Babe, when you find yourself advocating for chopping people's heads off who haven't directly harmed you, you might not be the good guy. You might not be the good guy in this situation, in this scenario. You might actually be the villain. Again, it is just so wild to me how these people can literally call for violence on TikTok. But I regularly get my videos hit with strikes or taken down for hate speech or other silly nonsense, but literal calls for violence are fine if they're targeting the rich. And don't hit me with the, oh, she's just being hyperbolic, she's just being this. No, they mean this. People like this, at least, actually mean this. And that's what's crazy to me. Because I can understand if you don't understand economics and you have a lot of class envy wanting to tax billionaires out of existence. I can understand how somebody would end up with that viewpoint. I disagree, but let's have that debate. But to want to murder them, y'all are just sick in the head. If you want to murder successful people for the crime of being successful and their families, their loved ones, their friends, all be damned. Like, that's sick. That's really messed up. It's really wrong, but unfortunately it is representative of where at least a chunk of the young socialist left is moving in this country. And that's really, really frightening. And I do want to talk about this on the substance as well, because it is just so misleading and so wrong in so many ways. One of which is using these headlines that say, in this case, let's see exactly what the headline said. It said, United States, CNBC reports the wealth of the top 1% has hit a record high of 44.6 trillion. So you see these headlines a lot, but what you have to understand is that's essentially just referring to stock market valuations that have gone up. And they never show you the opposite headline when the stock market dips. Wealthy lose 6 trillion in one day. They never have the same energy for those headlines, right? So it's very misleading to just focus on these peak valuations that are not actual money in their pockets anyway. It's just the stock valuations of their companies they own and that kind of thing. But then they never have the same energy for when the stocks go back down. So you'll see wealthy gain $5 trillion in 1 week as the headline, but they never do the follow-up headline the next week when it goes back down, like wealthy lose 5 trillion, because there's no sympathy for the wealthy. And I'm not saying there should be, but I'm just saying this is a very incomplete way of looking at the picture. The other thing is that we don't have all these valid social problems that this young woman identified. High grocery prices, high prescription drug prices, high housing prices. None of that is because billionaires exist. The reasons for that are complicated, but in the case of prescription drugs, there are so many government regulations that make drugs unnecessarily expensive. They block us from ordering the exact same drug that's way cheaper just from Canada or other places in many cases that we should just be able to get and should be over the counter. And there's so many other things that go into this that are causing this problem. And most of them are rooted with the government and it's meddling in our economy and it's corruption. But instead, y'all just want to save all your smoke and all your energy for the Elon Musks and Jeff Bezos Bezoses of the world who got successful through some shady things here or there. I'm not saying they're angels, but by and large, by running successful companies that employ people and contribute to the economy and add massive value to all of our lives, yet you want to demonize them to the point of literally advocating for violence. I'll never understand that energy. I'll never share that energy. That simply couldn't be me. And another funny thing about this that I do want to point out is that according to Reason, and this is from 2021, so these numbers are a little outdated, but it gives you the picture of what I'm trying to say. You could confiscate the entire net worth, all the money of the billionaires in the US, and you would fund our government, federal, state, and local, for about 6 months. Then you'd be out of money and you'd just be done. So the idea that you could solve all our social problems by just stealing all these people's money, you couldn't even pay for what we're doing now by doing that, let alone all this new stuff that you want to do. It's a simplistic, naive narrative that is attractive in its simplicity and in its offering of a false solution. If we just taxed the rich more, we could solve all these social problems. Well, there's a couple problems with that. One is that we already tax the rich quite a bit. We actually have a pretty progressive federal tax system. Two, there's economic consequences from just overly taxing rich people that would affect everyone, right? Everyone who has a retirement account would be hurt by some of these taxes targeting the stock market. The corporate tax increases end up hurting workers through lower wages and fewer jobs. All of these things have more effects than just the rich, who obviously I'm not overly sympathetic to, but it's more complicated than just that. And two, a lot of these social problems are actually a lot more complicated than just throw money at them and we could solve them. If throwing money at homelessness, for example, could solve that issue, well, San Francisco and other places in California wouldn't have the homelessness epidemic that they have, right? Because they've spent so much money. In the same way, we spent trillions and trillions of dollars. There's like crazy graphs on this, throwing money at welfare programs to end poverty, and the poverty rate barely budges in response to it. So you can't just throw more money at these problems and hope that they'll be solved, because it doesn't actually solve the complex and nuanced systemic issues at the core of some of these issues. So my first concern with videos like this is just their like bizarrely bloodthirsty nature and what it says about our culture, that anyone thinks it's okay to talk about their fellow Americans like this and genuinely simp for their death. That really does disturb me on just a fundamental moral level. But on another level, even videos that are less extreme but still have this kind of worldview frustrate me because they cannot see the forest for the trees. They're so obsessed with class envy that they're totally disregarding basic principles of economics, and they're offering people false hope in an empty solution that sounds great but can't actually address complicated social issues in the simple, easy fix the way that they claim they can. If you ask me, misleading people with false hope like that isn't compassionate, it's cruel. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button while you're at it.